ready to begin? Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Adgure Name, Jugadgure Name, Satgure Name, Sri Gurudev Name. Adgure Name, Jugadgure Name, Satgure Name, Sri Gurudev Name. Adgure Name, Jugadgure Name, Satgure Name, Sri Gurudev Name. Satnam. How are you gentlemen this morning? Yeah, you had a lot of coffee? You're all starbucked. So today we're going to begin by kind of closing what we were talking about yesterday. You had a little homework that I left, which was really basically to go back into that story that you were telling about your own self in the beginning. And after everything you've gone through and we've talked and meditated, did that shift? Did that story change? Did you find a way to figure out how to change that story? So what I want to ask you is to get together in groups of 3 and share your insights about that. And if you guys can come closer here, that would be great. So please get together. I'll give you 5-7 minutes so that you can share, the perspective of where you were, and have there been any shifts regarding, the way that you are interpreting and telling and sharing the story of your life. And if you haven't figured out exactly how, share about, some insight of what you can do to change that story. So, go ahead. Inhale deeply. And exhale. Was that a good conversation? Yeah? Who thought it was really good conversation? Okay. Very well. Well, I want to know because I got the sense that we need to have more of these conversations going in this camp. one-to-one conversations. So I'll try to, at least in my segment, allow for more of that. And, when we finish the class, I'll try to continue with that. So, amen. All right, so I want to begin the day by telling you a few stories. And the reason I want to tell you these stories is because I think that these stories tell us a lot about exactly what is the nature of man. And when I'm talking about the nature of man, I'm talking about the masculine aspect of this creation, which we as men represent. When we're talking about, when I say man, when I say the masculine, really is that it represents that part of the polarity that is prevailing in men. Not that women don't have the polarity of the masculine, because they do. And not that we don't have the polarity of the feminine, because we do. But because it is in that recognition of that very intimate, our very intimate relationship to our own polarity, that we can start really understanding how to become full-fledged human beings, as women and as men. When one of the polarities is living as another polarity, like if I'm a man and I feel this conflict that I feel like inside of myself more like a woman, then I have a big conflict, right? This happens quite often, that people have these feelings, because this is the interplay of these polarities that are happening within ourselves. But what is quite interesting is that we really have to follow that guidance that polarity is giving us, so that we can become really whole men in this case, when we're talking about the masculine. And today I want to start telling you about this story of how we came to understand this, because it has thousands of years that we have been gathered together around fire pits, around different places of the world, trying to figure out what all means. And about 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years BC, the ancient Indo-Europeans were sitting around a campfire and trying to figure out how to make sense of this whole world. Because, I don't think that, animals normally sit down and ponder how to make sense of the world. We normally, in our animal nature, we are too busy just surviving, reproducing, making sure that our species gets recognized and does not die away. And we're driven by that biology. That is our biology. But as human beings and as men, specifically as men, we have kind of a calling, a impulse to go and figure out something more. It goes to the point where once that we have had our basic needs taken care of, we need more. This is just a principle of life. I see it everywhere. When I see somebody that has $2 billion in their bank account, they're just thinking about how to go get the next billion to make it 3. And if they're not pursuing that next billion, they're pursuing some power position to be recognized, or they're seeking something else. So there's always this movement towards figuring out things and to become more and become more. And these ancient Indo-Europeans came with a great idea. They didn't have particle accelerators to try to figure out nature, but they had their own selves. And they developed a one principle that is, what is within is without. What is without is within. So anything that gets created into a body of philosophy or a body of knowledge has to fit that equation, which makes entirely a lot of sense. So, and you'll see why. Normally, science has been telling us that, we inside of ourselves are dreaming, are imagining on things that are unreal. We imagine God that is unreal. We have feelings that are, we have all these, we have been the victim of this perspective on life that is completely material and objectivistic. And in the process, we have lost the focus that we are, that is an important part. The physical world is an important part. But there's also an internal part of us that needs the same amount of attention and explaining. For these ancient Indo-Europeans, when they figured out this equation, they started to try to make sense of the world. Because at that time, they were facing starvation, they were facing war, they were facing illnesses they could not understand, they were facing, they didn't control the environment like we do. They had gods for thunder and gods for, fire, and gods to represent every force in nature that they could see. But even in that elementary way of understanding the world, or very archaic way of understanding the world, they were trying to make sense of it. One way that they tried to make sense of it is to say, well, we have to understand that what happens in this planet, in this earth, what is happening in my life, is a reflection of what the gods are doing in the ethers. That was one of the first explanations about this, within and without. But, eventually we started to understand that there were no gods in the ethers playing games, and that we were not the marionettes of these gods. Because our understanding and our sensitivity and our wisdom grew and became more profound. And as that happened, these ancient people, these ancient seers, we started calling them rishis. And rishis, in the literature in yoga and in ancient India, had one basic premise that they needed to do, which is they needed to be able to explain how things work in this world and in the next. And they needed to link what's going on in the next with this world. So any philosophy that had to do with creation, any philosophy had to do with the destruction, any philosophy had to do with suffering, any philosophy had to do with explaining anything, had to necessarily be tied up in a nice way. And in yoga they called it bandhu. If it didn't have bandhu, if it didn't make sense to me and to you and to the universe, then it doesn't make sense. It's not real. And that was a guiding principle of these rishis for many years. And that's how we came to understand, we came to develop this incredible body of knowledge that we have in Kundalini Yoga and in yoga in general, where things are not explained in terms of science, mostly. But now we're understanding that science is beginning to explain things in terms of yoga, which is a little bit, it's a different language, it's a different conception, it's a different, science is a modern way of looking at the world. But the way that yoga was looking at the world had the same basis in reality, because it had to do with a language that united this world with the next. And why was uniting this world with the next important? Transition, because we kind of felt that we were in transition going back to that world, right? We were facing death. We need to explain what's going to happen after death. That's one reason. What other reason would you think? Transcendence. Yeah, we need to We need to feel, that there's something more than just this little drama that we're living. Right? Understanding? Right. By understanding and by getting and feeling and connecting it, we feel connected, right? So all are these reasons that really took us to figure out that what was within needed to be without. Now, I'll switch into the language of science. Because this is exactly what science has figured out too. And now I'm switching to the language of science because we understand that a little bit better, because we have it more in our vocabulary, and because it is amazing that through the language of science, we've been able to also figure out these two principles of the masculine and the feminine being created in the moment. So, to go there, I'd like to take you to the Big Bang. You know what happened in the Big Bang, right? There was a Big Bang. And, but now we know that everything that happened, everything that God created, God created in a fraction of a second. We know this because we have a lot of smart physicists around that have figured out the nature of energy and matter to the nth degree. And they have figured out exactly what were the conditions necessary for this universe to happen as it has happened. And that's how we came to understand the Big Bang. So when the scientists were trying to understand the Big Bang and see, okay, well, we understand everything that happened, and don't quote me exactly on the numbers because I don't have them in my brain, but we understand what has happened in this universe at the first second, but at a fraction of 1 times 10 to the 36 zeros. So that is like at a billionth of a billionth of a billionth of a second. Everything that happened in every billionth of a second between the zero, T0 and T1 when everything was created was critical to how this universe got created. And what happened was that they were trying to figure out whether matter was created first, or energy was created first, or what was created first in these billions and billions and billions of a second. And they finally, to make all these equations work, they realized that the first thing that happened was the space God created. And space was created so fast in that infinitesimal amount of time within a second. It started expanding out of nothing, just out of nothing, expanding so fast that matter did not have time to get produced. So the first thing that happens was this space gets created by this unknown process. And suddenly, just imagine this bubble that suddenly gets created, and it's a vacuum. And this vacuum is just so violent, it's so explosive, that a few billionths of a second later, it starts to slow down. And just as it starts to slow down, matter, and matter just starts to catch up with this little process. And suddenly the same way that rain, that you could have dew at night when there's a certain temperature and the water precipitates, and there's water in the ground, right? Without rain. We've all seen that. The same way, at a certain point, the temperature of the universe and the pressure and the movement and everything that has happened in those billions and billionths of a second suddenly slows down. And then there's suddenly all these quarks appear. They get precipitated. And there's trillions upon trillions upon trillions of quarks. And there's trillions and trillions of quarks that are anti-quarks. And in that explosion of quarks and anti-quarks, which is almost the same amount of quarks and anti-quarks, this incredible collapse happens because these get precipitated out of nothing, and suddenly the only difference is, and I don't remember this number exactly, but for every 10 trillion anti-quarks, there was 10 trillion and one quark. That was just like the little trick of God, you know? He created all this mass. Everything got annihilated in that little process because we had quarks and anti-quarks, and it just got blown into nothing. But there was a small, very, 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 very small difference. One quark more than anti-quarks by trillion, you know. Just imagine a 1 in 67 or 80 zeros. And there was just one more quark on the side of the quark versus anti-quark. This was this difference between the anti-quarks and the quarks is all the mass that we have in this universe. Just imagine the size of that explosion. Well, in yoga we know that when this happens, it is when Purusha starts to manifest into the world. And the first thing that happens is that the first condition of this universe is that there's going to be polarity. Shiva and Shakti in yogic terms. And, you know, in terms of the physicists and quarks and anti-quarks. But the equation is just slightly rigged so that the universe just happens to exist. And for a split moment, all the matter, all the energy in this whole universe is in one single spot that occupies what today is a space equivalent to one atom. This is where everything came from. So we have two principles here. One is the principle that its space is opening up, and one is the principle that space itself expands everything. What does that have to do with me as a man, you would ask? Because these are the two principles of feminine and masculine explained in terms of polarity, and what drives each one. The masculine is that which is pushing every single moment into the unknown. And in this moment, in this universe, all the boundaries that are being pushed constantly into the unknown, out of nothing, and something is being created out of nothing, that is a masculine principle. And all that is contained within this universe is the feminine principle, which is nature. And it is in this incredible dance of expansion and containment that we live this process of feminine and masculine. The same way that yogis would explain this as bandhu, they had to be coherence between within and without. You know, for the physicists, they thought within is in the atom, and without is in the universe. So they started figuring out with quantum mechanics, when we're talking about the small within stuff, and relativity for the big stuff. And they started to figure out there has to make sense between the small and the big, between what is inside and what's outside. And they call this, you know, the same word that the yogis used was bandhu. For physicists, they call it symmetry. And the universe has to have symmetry. But when they started to explore, they started figuring out that they could see all these different parts of symmetry manifested in this universe. But they also spotted that they were broken symmetries. And that's why they realized that by trying to figure out these broken symmetries, they had to come to one ultimate symmetry. That's how we figured out that there was a Big Bang and there was one origin, one Ik Onkar. In one moment, On, the sound, created Kar, the creation. One single moment that we now know it's not even a second. It's not even a tenth of a second. It's not even a billionth of a second. It's a billionth of a billionth of a billionth of a billionth of a second that this happened. And this incredible sound just created everything. So before I used to think, sound creates everything. Yeah, that's a there's a very poetic way that yogis explain it. Physicists also explain it like that. Every atom that we are using in our body was created by sound. Did you know that? This is the power of sound. When a star that is about 10 or 20 times bigger than our sun starts to consume its energy, it becomes a core of iron inside of the star, to the point that gravity becomes so intense, so intense, that gravity itself starts stripping, electrons out of the atoms of the iron and everything. And suddenly, out of nothing, matter cannot sustain itself anymore, and it collapses. And as it collapses, the biggest sound of the world you've ever heard. It is a sound wave, a literal sound wave. Begins from the center of the star and starts expanding towards the outside of the star. And when it reaches the surface of the star, it explodes and becomes a supernova. And this explosion was created in also a second. It was created by sound, by a sound wave inside of the star. And in this explosion, all the atoms that we know, like the gold, this gold that you have in your body, the iron you have, this aluminum that is holding this whole thing, was created in one such star. And as it explodes, it throws all this debris into the interstellar space until a few billion years later, another star gathers this, another new planetary system starts it, and then, you have the San Francisco 49ers going and digging out the gold that was just left by an explosion eons ago. I mean, this is fascinating. But this is really the process and the play of Prakriti, the process and play of the female and the masculine polarities. I mean, it's a creation beyond explanation. It's creature after creature, world after world that is being created like this, constantly. And for men, it is important to understand at least one thing, that our prosperity, our creativity, depends on understanding that it comes out of nothing. Just the same way that everything God created. Everything begins within, and we can explode our facilities, our creativity, our projection to be able to manifest in this earth what we need to do in our own scale, in our own size. But it's the power of the universe. It is the power of God Himself that He gave to this universe that we can harness enough of it to create our own reality. So there's no need for any of us to feel poor. There's no need of us to feel, victimized. There's no need for anything like that, because in the most basic truth of this universe is that if you go to nothing, something is going to be created. Have you heard this before in yoga? When you make something nothing enough, it expands into everything. That's just the rule. You want to be prosperous? Become nothing. Yogi Bhajan, if you go to Española, you'll see that he has he built his tombstone many years before he died. It says, Siri Singh Sahib Harbhajan Singh Khalsa Jogi Ji, born in 0, died in 1. Have you seen that? Born in 0 is exactly when we become 0, partahar. When this partahar experience through our mind is shunya, we become nothing, and suddenly, wow, all these options appear. And out of this confusion and the quarks and anti-quarks and whatever everybody wants to explain, there's still a small difference in your favor. And out of that, we can create whatever we need. God takes care of us. All we have to do is get out of the way. But as long as we are saying, well, the universe is just like I'm saying it is, and the universe has to do what I want, well, you're not harnessing the power. It is like trying to move a rock without having a crane. Go get the crane, for heaven's sakes. Use harness the power of the river to create electricity, right? You guys do that over here in the Northeast, in Northwest all the time. Not in Texas. Because everything's flat and there's no water. But it is the trick of harnessing that power and figuring out how we're going to expand it. And each one of us has that capacity to expand into, make everything out of nothing. There's no 2 cents about it. Yogi Bhajan used to say that the law of vacuum is that there's no vacuum. So, create the vacuum and something's going to happen. What is going to happen? I don't know, but it's going to be fixed. He taught me this in a very, very practical way. And yesterday, we talked about sharing a story. I'll share a story about that. Our business was just totally being destroyed because we couldn't get milk. We were manufacturing Satnam yogurt in Mexico. And one day the government decided that nobody could manufacture yogurt because that's the law. Because milk is for the children, not for the yogurt makers. So we couldn't get milk and so forth. So our business was just going like this: 2-3 weeks, no yogurt, no milk. Our clients calling us, inventories, money lost. It was desperate. And one day he calls, and he says, I had a partner, so he calls us and says, I am in your country. How come you're not here? He had flown into Cozumel. So, Babaji and I discussed it and said, well, I'm here dealing with the milk issue. Why don't you go and take care of him while I try to fix the milk issue? And it's a really dumb thing to do, when you're talking to the Siri Singh Sahib about this. So he goes over there, and the Siri Singh Sahib says, what did you bring me? So Babaji gave him a golden lighter. He says, no. And then he grabbed the phone and he called me, and he bawled me out. Who do you think you are? I'm visiting your country and you're not even a good host. This whole guilt trip. It was just like, remember, he would guilt trip you really badly. Guru Singh. So he guilt trips me to death, to the point that I said, sir, forget it. I'll get on the plane, the hell with the business. I don't care about your business. This business is Mickey Mouse. And he just, he had a way of getting mad and making you know that he was mad. So I heard about the issue with the little lighter, and I said, well, obviously that's not going to fly. So I just got my credit card, and I went to the bank and I bought 1 ounce of gold. So I got on the plane with my credit card too, because we have no money after all that. And we arrive and we stay in this luxury hotel, and I'm thinking, where are we going to pay for this? You know? Where is this going to come from? So I walked into him and into the room, and he just looks at me and says, "Here again." You know, he doesn't even say hi. You know? So I just humbly put the gold coin in his hand, and he put it like here. He stayed there for a couple of minutes, and he says, "You have milk now." And exactly 2 hours later, our milk vendor was knocking on the door saying, "I figured out a way of getting milk for you guys, and you can have everything, all you want." You know? And it is exactly that capacity that we as men have to understand and have this relationship with this vacuum. Because understand that the universe was created out of nothing, and there was just pure space, and out of space matter precipitated, and up to now, after 14 billion years, this process is still going on, and that the masculine is still going out there, expanding ever more, while the feminine is containing everything into nature. How are you going to apply that to your life, to your business, to your work? How are you going to make it real? You make it real by following those same little processes. You know, he took us to the point of having to, put everything in a credit card so that we were almost in minus, I don't know how much. He needed to create that vacuum to solve it, to solve our problem. And then one day, I said, "Sir, what are we going to do when you're not around?" He said, "That's why I'm teaching you. You have to do it too." And that's the technology. That is the technology of Partahar. Out of nothing comes everything. That is the technology of Guru Nanak. Out of nothing comes his admiration and beauty for God. He says, I'm not God. I'm not a Bhagwan. I'm not anything. I am the dust on the feet of the servants who serve the saints of God. He doesn't even want to be the feet of the saints. He just wants to be the dust that touches the feet of the saints. That is like, that is a state of Partahar in which you feel like nothing. And once you become nothing, then you can just appreciate everything. And you can play with everything. So it's not a nothing because you feel inferiority complex. It is a conscious nothing from which the everything happens. So as men, we talk that this masculine principle is the principle of being in the boundary of the universe, right? It is what is expanding the universe. And in this boundary, we find our manliness, the masculine, really exciting. When we are not in that boundary, we feel that, bored. We feel that we don't have a mission in life. We don't have meaning in life. That is just the nature of man. We like to be in the edge of the universe. We like to be exploring what's next. We want to be the guy going in the caravel trying to figure out where America is. Hasn't it been always the story of man? That we're always trying to figure out the next step. This is the principle of the masculine. Why did we ever get to the moon? Because it was the principle of the masculine taking us to somewhere where we haven't gone anywhere before. It needed the support of the feminine. It needed the support of the earth to be able to get to the moon. But the principle to get there, what made us feel happy, was going there. And the other day I was listening to some scientists saying, I wish it was 1969 again, because In those days, everybody was enamored with the project of going to the moon. Everybody felt so proud. It was not even Americans. So I was in Mexico, and being a Mexican and looking at, Neil Armstrong touching the moon, it was a moment of humanity touching the moon. Right? It was a magical moment. And that was like an incredible triumph of this masculine. But then, since then, we don't have a clear-cut goal. We don't have a thing that we want to fix or that we want to figure out, or a project as humanity. It is too scattered. We do have incredible things to solve. We need to save this planet, for example, amongst other things. But that is a goal that is kind of diffuse. Some people believe it, some people don't believe it. Looking at the moon is, oh yeah, the moon, and that aligns your ego, aligns your earth, aligns your spirit, your intelligence, and getting to the moon. But the next frontier right now really is about saving this planet. And saving this planet by saving ourselves. So let's think about that male principle of figuring out this. Where is that boundary, and how can we make it happen? How can we bring that? Because in the process of making things happen, we will feel satisfied as men. Because that means that we will be able to deliver. And deliverance is a quality of the man. Without deliverance, we are not men. Without deliverance, we cannot ejaculate. We cannot impregnate a woman, right? That is just the quality of the male. We have it. And we don't know, we need to take it from here, from the penis, all the way to the 7th chakra. And project it. That is what is a male of consciousness. That is what brings depth to the male quality. So the male really thrives in the boundary. And the boundary is a place where there is risk, where there's danger, where there's the unknown. So a male that, by definition, lets himself be driven by fear, or controlled by fear, or controlled by the playings and the little games of your mind, is not capable of living in the boundary. Because the boundary has risk. Risk implies that you need courage to face it. So I like to think that we have really two different, axes of boundary. Horizontal boundary. A horizontal line of action. And let's call this nature. And here we have a boundary between female and male, right? I don't remember which one is male and which one is female. So, I'm good? Male and female? Okay. So when we are dealing on Earth, we're really always playing within this plane, which is really the horizontal plane. It has to do with our needs, our basic impulses. And as males, we're very good at playing with this. When we're playing football, we're playing in boundaries that have to do with Earth. We're playing with boundaries between victory and defeat, between conquering and not conquering, between, dominating or not dominating, between, all that. You're all hockey fans, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that works here in this level. But what this does, this is the width. So we have width, and then we have another line that goes here. And this is really the line between the unknown and the known. So as men, we're always trying to find this point, right? So if we are totally focused on the horizontal, what we become is superficial men. There's no depth. As we play around between the known and the unknown, and we go to this boundary between the known and the unknown, we begin to impact the way that we can connect. So if we want to bring the unknown into the known, we need to be here, and we have to have the power of deliverance to bring the unknown into the known. And that will give us depth. You know, you can apply this to anything. You can apply it to science. You can apply it to art. You can apply it to any endeavor in life. There's always an aspect that is known, and there's an aspect that is unknown. There's an aspect that is, as physical as this world in nature. But as men, as courageous men, we really need to go to that point where we don't know exactly what's on the other side of the fence. And we need to be comfortable sitting in that space, because otherwise we cannot go into the unknown and bring things into the known. The same way, we need to be able to relate to polarity in a conscious way. We need to be able to have a conscious relationship with the feminine, to use the parts of the feminine that we need to nurture our feminine to make us whole. And we can't just be sitting in our macho position saying, yeah, I'm super macho, I can live, just foraging, and I don't need women, I don't need anything. We can't do that. So this boundary between in the existence of your own self is important to figure out. Some men thrive on being on that boundary, like base jumpers, right? They're really kind of the horizontal position, but they're trying to push their bodies or their fear beyond the limits of normal humans, and they're jumping off mountains and flying with suits and doing things, risking their life, pushing the envelope, pushing the level of risk. And it is through that exploration that we continue understanding better and better, And sometimes you can get a suit, and then you can fly around the mountains, and you get that type of knowledge. You can be in the forefront of the intellect as a physicist, or as a writer, or as a scientist, or a doctor. And you can be totally all the time looking into the unknown. Everything's happening in genetics. What is it? It is this systematic exploration of the unknown to make it known. What is the effort that, somebody like Sri Aurobindo, writing a poem like Savitri, who wrote it 8 times, to see how deep he could write a poet about spirituality and ethers. He wrote it 8 times, and it's about this thick. He was trying to manifest. Every time he would finish it, he would realize that there was one more level, something deeper that he could go into, something deeper that he could tap to bring back into the known. So if you see the work and the life of men that live with this no fear to the unknown and bringing it back into the known, it is a life of people that have an impact. Now, I understand that not all of us are going to be Nobel Prize winners, or some of us might. Some of us might be, get an Emmy or not. Some of us are pretty content in just being family men and making a living. But what I'm telling you is that in whatever area of your life you are, you need to be living in that space where you're making the unknown known. The unknown is infinite. It never ends. You will never finish it. So don't fear that. You don't fear that idea that, once I know everything, I'm going to get bored. It doesn't work like that. The more you know you don't know. And the more subtle and the more profound and the deeper it becomes. So even if you just strive to be a family man, you have a great opportunity in the relationship between you and your wife. Because it is in that relationship between you and your wife that you can start exploring that difference. And I'll get into that a little bit later after we meditate. The woman, the same way that you are trying to push the boundary, the woman is always trying to contain you. So she's part of this process too. She's there to support it. She's there to contain it. Because ultimately, that part of nature, that part of yourself, is part of the motivation that you're doing this for. That is the feminine that is surrounding that little circle in the middle. It is a beautiful equation. What is within is without. And in this relationship between the in and out is that we develop ourselves. We can see ourselves. We can figure out what our courage is. Where is that boundary? Well, ask yourself, where is my fear? We all have a fear, right? We have fear of failure. We can have fear of, spirits in the forest. We can have fear of losing money. We can have fear of death. We can have fear of being sick. We can have fear of being alone. We can have all those fears. But this equation tells us that if you go deeper within that fear, you can transform that fear into something beautiful. That fear takes you into that unknown. Why am I feeling fear for lack of money? Or fear for this or that? Why am I feeling that? If I understand that all I have to do is become nothing so that everything gets expanded, and the vacuum will create everything. So, whenever I explore myself, I really go deep into that idea of, what is it I'm fearing? Or as soon as I start feeling fear, it is the moment that I have to stop and say, hey, Gurudev, what is it here that is not working? What is my soul telling me as a man that I have to conquer to get rid of this fear? No, it's not going to therapy. No, it's not taking an antidepressant. That's not going to work. What's going to work is that I face that fear and you say, okay, let's explore. Let's go there and you see what's happening there. Let's see what happens. If I don't have any money, my test is at that moment, trust that things are going to be good. That the hidden hand of God is going to take care of me. That divine providence is going to take care of me. That the universe is going to provide. However we want to envision this, it will happen. Because that is in the DNA of the universe. But to be able to manifest the universe, there had to be no fear. It's an act of fearlessness. Boom, everything happens. Everything creates. It gets concentrated. So if you're ever challenged because you're facing a tragedy or a lack of something, think about it. This is temporary. This is just like the Big Bang that had nothing in the beginning, and suddenly, it started expanding and it created all. Women thrive on that. And if we don't let that impulse as men take us there, then we will not feel satisfied as men. If I want to feel my masculine, and I want to feel like a man, I just have to do that. I have to be able to have that capacity to go there and deliver, penetrate. Penetration is one of those words that is related also with the penis, right? It is also quality of the male. We need to be able to penetrate. And it is this process of penetrating and achieving that gives us a sense of being. It gives meaning to our life. Now, what are we going to be penetrating? Well, you can be penetrating a lot of physically women. You can physically be penetrating a lot of women, and see if that gives you any depth. Or you can physically and mentally and spiritually and consciously and penetrate another a woman, and then you create this incredible bond. Because it has depth, it has a basis, and it has a height, it has a destination, it shines. And she needs to find her own creativity, her own realization as a feminine by containing that, by containing you. And she will feel satisfied doing that. So, but we as men, we need that strength, we need that clarity to be able to do this. To be able to penetrate, you need to know where you're going. You need to have clarity of what's going on. And if you're confused, and if you have doubts, and if you have fear, and if you have all these things that are flying around and identified flying objects in your mind, there's no clarity. And then without clarity, you don't have a target. And without a target, you can't hit it. Without hitting it, you're not penetrating. You're not delivering. Guru Singh yesterday was saying, as man, you're going to be walking. And you have, even if you're screwing up, even right now you think you're walking in one direction, a man is just going to say, I'm going to walk in this direction. And do it. But if you say, no, I'm not going to walk there because, gosh, maybe something's going to happen. Maybe there's going to be a scorpion around there. Maybe there's going to be, maybe that. And then you're just frozen in time and don't do anything. That is not manly. That is not masculine. Walk. Do. He used to say, idiots think, saints do. Have you ever heard that from Siddhi Sahib say that? He said it all the time. Idiots think, saints do. And as a man, you have to do. I mean, you have to really be clear and take a path, commit to the path, and make it happen. Get there. Being in that age without fear gives a meaning to our existence as men. Being in that age gives us enough of that. You can use all these emotions like fear and exhilaration, and you can use these things to take you to the edge, but not to prevent you from exploring the edge. When you have a base jumper, and he's about to jump, he has fear, except that he's exploring his fear, right? It's not that he's just like, oh yeah, I'm so good at it, I'm just going to go and pull the parachute at the last possible moment. And I'm not feeling anything. Of course he's feeling something. He felt the fear, he conquered the fear, and after he jumped, he feels acceleration because he conquered it. Right? I'm not telling you to go base jump. But every one of us, each one of us, has a cliff where we can jump, and that we need to jump, so that we can test our fear, our commitment, and our capacity to pull that trigger before we hit the ground. And then when we do that, man, we feel powerful. We feel manly. We feel successful. But success, even when you get that success, it has a shadow. What is the shadow of success? Hmm? No. Boredom. Now you're successful. You did it. And you get sit down and you're bored. And then you start doing like Guru-san was saying yesterday, just buying toys. Now I need a boat, a two-boat, an airplane. I need a house here, a house there. And that life is so boring. It is so boring. It is beyond boring. I had my share of sitting in a table with people that do that exactly, that they have 3 yachts and 5 airplanes and so forth. And the only thing that happens in that conversation is, well, I went on this incredible trip in my private plane and this happened. And the other guy says, well, I went scuba diving in my submarine and I went to the bottom of the ocean. And the conversation is about this little horizontal conquest. No depth, no feeling, just superficial stuff. That's right. And it's exciting for a little moment, you know. You go out and buy the latest airplane, and you fly it for a few weeks. It's really exciting. You feel very powerful, but then a few months later, it's there sitting and rotting in a hangar because it lost its shine. Because we as men, once we get to the success and we get bored, what do we need to do? We have to find the next target and go after it. Now, is your next target buying a bigger airplane? Or your next target is to really understand the depth of yourself and feel the gratitude of everything that you have? And how can you become more by giving more? Because in the nature of men, what makes us really happy is to be able to give. So if I'm just thinking about, what's my next airplane going to look like? I'm going to get into the silly conversation, well, I want it metallic black. And your wife is going to say, well, no, I want it silver white. No, I want it black. No, white. No, black. Well, I'll divorce you because I want white. This is the type of Seinfeld conversations that we have every day. They make no sense. But once you have that success, and you start thinking, and you start figuring out that there's things that we can conquer, they're not necessarily looked at, and they're not really toys, but they're things that we have inside of ourselves, then we start talking about something interesting. And that is exactly what these ancient yogis did when they were trying to figure out the relationship, this equality between within and without, with Bandhu. They started exploring within themselves because they realized, just as Buddha realized, that being a prince, having money, having horses and carriages in those days because there were no airplanes, was not going to give you satisfaction. That you were still going to be suffering. That you will still be under the pain of superficial consciousness. That you wouldn't have a possibility of understanding yourself or life or your woman or your children. And then ultimately, you were going to be feeling all alone, being a fool. So these ancient rishis decided that they were going to explore with the tools that they had at those moments and start exploring inside of themselves. And they realized that within ourselves, by quieting our mind, we have access to sensitivities, sensibilities, realities that are not normally accessible just by regular, everyday activity. They realized that within ourselves we had Brahman. That was the first step in beginning to understand and decipher this process of yoga. When they understood that within ourselves was Brahman, What they were saying is, the whole of the universe is contained within me. The whole of the universe and more, which is Brahman, is in me. They realized that just by introspection. And they thought that at that moment, if they shed all their worldly valuables and they forgot their families and just went and explored this particular aspect, they would get to that point. And they did. So that's the masculine, going into the unknown, going into the unknown of your own self. And discovering that within yourself you have these incredible jewels that you can take out, you can bring out. And as we started figuring out that there was a Brahman, then some people started to say, hey, I want to feel that, but I don't want to forget about my wife and my palace. Can I have some of that too? Because ultimately just meditating on Brahman, on this absolute, was unsatisfying too. You know why? Because it was just like getting, absorbed into the blob of totality without any identity. And the question was then, well, if there's this Brahman, which is the absolute, why do I have a personality? Why do I have an ego? Why do I have needs in this world? Why, do I have to stop eating to be able to access that Brahman? Do I have to stop relating to other human beings to talk to this Brahman? And the answer was no. You don't have to do that. The question was, how can I look at Brahman, the Brahman that is inside of each one of us? And we started to identify one term, one concept, which was the Atman. It is that part of the Brahman that is within each one of us. And then things started to get interesting, because now I could start feeling the Atman in you, and you could feel the Atman in me, and that opened up a whole different circuitry within my nervous system. That opened the possibility of feeling empathy and compassion. That opened the possibility of being able to deal with my emotions for the first time. See, because one of the key questions to deal with my emotions is that I need to be able to see myself through your eyes. That is just an incredible secret. Write that one down, because we normally don't talk about it. But for me, or you, it is very important to see yourself through the eyes of another person. When your wife tells you, honey, you're not listening to me, she is not seeing herself reflected in you. So whenever your wife tells you, hey, listen to me, you're not hearing me, it is a moment to say, okay, what do I do? What do I have to do to reflect back to her, to let her know that I am actually listening to her? That's all she needs. 99% of the time, all she needs is for you to reflect her back. For you to shine her. She's the moon. She wants to see herself reflected. She needs that reflection. She needs the clarity of your light reflected back to her. That will bring back the whole equation. It will give you. You don't have to tell her anything. Just say, yeah, honey, I'm here for you. I hear you. I understand you told me that your mother's coming for dinner tomorrow. I think it's great. Sometimes you have to reflect what you need to reflect, right? Because women are always going to be challenging men. You know, Yogi Bhajan says because they are insecure, they need to challenge you. Right. But also because they're testing your strength, your character. And they want to feel your strength and your character. That is the sun. That is the sun energy in each male. The clarity and the projection and this capacity to project that. They want to feel it. So at first when I heard him say that, it says, yeah, because women are so neurotic, they need to be testing me all the time. Well, I could tell myself that story, but I can also tell my story in terms of she's testing me because she wants to feel my light. She wants to know that I'm shining on her. And that will give her trust. And if she has trust in that light, there will be a possibility of intimacy. And if we have intimacy, then we have the possibility of feeling each other in a way that we have never done. And we can have intimacy. You cannot have unity and uniousness without intimacy. The union with God, the union with a woman, the union is intimate because you're one with somebody else. So be a man. Have that projection. Don't fear whether you're right or wrong. Use your intuition to go wherever you need to go. Test your intuition. Make corrections on the way. But walk. Project. Your woman, your female part is going to be grateful. You will be tested every day. You will pass the exam every day. And as you pass the exam, you're going to feel more and more self-realized. I'm not saying get into an ego trip. Oh, I'm going to do this, honey, because this is what we're going to do. It's not an ego trip at all. Because a woman will be able to sense whether your direction you're giving is through your ego or it is through your soul and your consciousness. And believe me, she wants your soul and your consciousness. Some women are nuts, as some men are. And some women want your money, not your consciousness. We're not talking this in a healthy relationship, in a healthy possibility. A woman wants your consciousness. They want to know that you're there for her to provide that direction, that capacity to deliver, to penetrate. And then when you open up that, she has the capacity to contain it. And that's why we are an incredible team. Between the force of the universe expanding and the universe itself containing everything, it is this wonderful play. All you have to do is imitate it. Feel it within yourself, because those forces that create the universe are the forces that are playing in a very subtle and profound way within yourself. The universe is not going to create, one principle here and not make it valid over here. Today we know that a hydrogen atom is a hydrogen atom in this planet, and it is a hydrogen atom 100 billion years, 10 billion light years away. In the whole universe, an atomic, a hydrogen atom is a hydrogen atom. There's not a hydrogen atom from the Milky Way and another one different from the Andromeda galaxy. No. They're all the same, because we all come from one source. In the same way is that those principles of expansion and containment are playing every day in your body, because they move your atoms, they move your quarks, they move your strings, They move all the most basic elementary particles of your being. So there's no such thing as divorcing myself from nature. I am part of nature. I am part of the universe. So in the measure that we can look and observe at nature, let's bring that and observe ourselves and see what does that have to do with us. And what is in us that we can observe in nature. It is an incredible play. It is so beautiful. It is just, you just go into bliss when you start looking at things in that big picture. And you start feeling it. And for you, it all starts by really tapping into your masculine and relating with your consciousness, with the feminine. In that capacity to be able to keep expanding the boundary, to be able to go to that place where there's edge, where it is the edge, where there is risk, apply it. Apply it to your work. Apply it to your business. Apply it to your life, to your relationships. If you've been married to a woman for 30 years, ask yourself, how can I make this deeper, even more profound? Well, I've been fighting with my wife for 20 years. Well, how about not finding a way not to fight with your wife anymore? So that you can go deeper and more intimate. So that you can penetrate deeper. And as you penetrate deeper, you feel greater satisfaction. It is a sacred intercourse with the whole universe. And I'm not talking about taking it into just the superficial part. Because we need to have intercourse to achieve unity, to achieve bliss, to achieve unity and coherence in our lives. That is the difference between one and the other. So one of the things that we need to do this is we need to have this vitality, and we need to have the capacity to get this knowledge from within ourselves. And we can get it through our breath. So I'm going to invite you to sit and let's do a meditation. First couple of minutes in this meditation, we're going to put our hands like this in a bowl, touching your Mercury finger in your id, and you're going to put it right in front of your heart. Eyes are going to be 1/10 closed. I'm sorry, 9/10 closed, 1/10 open. So just begin breathing long and deep. We're going to start listening to this mantra. Pavan, 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 Paratara. Pavan Guru. And this is a mantra that really gives you the knowledge of the whole universe. Not only of a part of the universe, of the whole universe. It lets you tap into the source of all knowledge. Keep meditating. Close your eyes. If you master this art of the Pavan Guru, all knowledge will come to you. You don't need to read books. All trouble will leave you. You will have all the vitality and the clear mind to see exactly where you're going as a man. And begin whispering it with a lot of energy. use the air in your lungs. Use your air. Breathe heavily. Whisper, strong whisper. This creates a breath pattern that is strong. Use your breath. Will give you the sensitivity to feel unity. Let it do it. It is a powerful breath with a powerful whisper. Gives you the sensitivity to feel the Creator. long breath.
Pavan Guru Vaheguru Vaheguru Pavan Guru Pavan 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 Para Para Pavan Guru Pavan Guru Vaheguru Vaheguru Pavan Guru Pavan 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 Para Para Pavan Guru Pavan Guru Vaheguru Vaheguru Pavan Guru Pavan 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 Para Para Pavan Guru Pavan Guru Vaheguru Vaheguru Pavan Guru Pavan 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 Para Para Pavan Guru Pavan Guru Vaheguru Vaheguru Pavan Guru Pavan 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 Para Para Pavan Guru Pavan Guru Vaheguru Vaheguru Pavan Guru Pavan 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 Para Para Pavan Guru Pavan Guru Vaheguru Vaheguru Pavan Guru Pavan 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 Para Para Pavan Guru Pavan Guru Vaheguru Vaheguru Pavan Guru Pavan 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 Para Para Pavan Guru Pavan
This mantra has a permutation and a combination to take you to infinity.
Pavan Guru
Through the vehicle of the breath.
Pavan 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 Para Para Pavan Guru
Go to the edge.
Pavan Guru Vaheguru Vaheguru Pavan Guru Pavan 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 Para Para Pavan Guru Pavan Guru Vaheguru Vaheguru Pavan Guru Pavan 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 Para Para Pavan Guru Pavan Guru Vaheguru Vaheguru Pavan Guru
Penetrate infinity.
Pavan Pavan Pavan
Cross all the finites.
Para Para Pavan
Penetrate infinity.
Pavan Guru
With no fear.
Vaheguru Pavan Guru Pavan 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 Para Para Pavan Guru Pavan Guru Vaheguru Vaheguru Pavan Guru
Now begin breathing long and deep, profoundly. Slow, deep breath. Remember the power of this breath. It can transform you. It can give you the knowledge, the energy, the vitality. The control over your own instincts. To be able to focus and deliver. Feel the link. Feel that you are at the edge. That everything that is you, including your fear and your limitation, are just your servants. They're not going to tell you where to go. Listen to their counsel and then do what you need to do as a man. You need to bring heaven to earth. That will fulfill your destiny as a man. Begin the breath of fire. Strong, very strong breath of fire. Inhale deeply. Pump your stomach. Exhale. Inhale deeply. Pump. Exhale. Last time. Inhale. Pump your stomach. And relax. Satnam. So as males, in closing remarks for this class, as males, we have this quality to penetrate, right? So be sure that you penetrate with your consciousness. Be sure you penetrate with your kindness. That you penetrate with your love, with your nobility, with your courage. And you will feel fulfilled. You know, this is a very important, powerful thoughts. It is a capacity that we have as males to be able to go in there and transform by this act of penetration. With your woman, you have to penetrate into her anger and transform that into love. You have to penetrate her insecurity and create trust out of the insecurity. If you don't penetrate her insecurity, no trust will ever be there. You have to penetrate her emotionality, not to control it, but to give her a sense of stability. You have to penetrate her doubt and her confusion to give her direction. In turn, you need to let yourself be contained by her. So you let her beauty inspire you. And you let her love nourish every cell of your body. Let her kindness relax you and make you feel loved. Make her feel your own infinity. That is how this equation works out. You penetrate, and then you let yourself be absorbed by those qualities of her. And if you have to penetrate her neurotic attitude in the process, you penetrate that, transform that into love so that she can shine in her love, and then you can be nourished by her love. You see, it's all a give and take. Both sides. Receive, both sides. Take, but the whole is more than the parts. And that's the important part. It is through this game of being able to know how to penetrate, how to live in the edge, how to be able to live, with this comfortable relationship between the known and the unknown, that you as a man will achieve liberation, which is your ultimate driver. You will feel love. You will feel exactly what love is. You will feel free. That's ultimate liberation, is this freedom. We males want to be free, right? We don't want to be pinned down anymore. And then we don't want to be committed because we don't want to be pinned down. Well, my idea is this. You cannot be free unless you're committed and pinned down. In the conscious way. With consciousness. Not by fear of somebody else. Not by manipulation or control of another lady or anybody else. But because you found the infinity within the feminine. By harnessing the infinity of your masculine, and in the process creating totality. She is, after all, your way to liberation. There's no two qualms about that. If it were otherwise, we can just go and meditate in a cave and forget about everything and just, masturbate ourselves with God all day. Really. We need her. We need, the goddess, the woman, the feminine, the universe, nature, to enter a state of rapture and to be able to find that unity. So, those are my closing remarks on this. I hope you get some ideas out of this talk. Implement them. And if You know, one thing that sometimes we don't mention is that men need other men to get nurtured too. Sometimes we can also get lost in the confusion of women. So make sure that you connect with other women. Make sure that you have mentors and models and people that you look out to that you can have profound conversations with. It's very important for men to have mentors. So look for men that inspire you, reach out, connect, and talk about these things so you can improve your penetration. Satnam. May the long time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way on. Sat Nam Vaheguru.